What's up, everybody? This is SNL Movie Chats, and we are your hosts, John Emery Singleton
and Joshua Lewis.
And today we are so excited to be talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie was amazing. So good. What were your expectations going into it?
My expectations for this movie were pretty high. All the trailers for it and marketing for it was really good, so I didn't really have a worry, and I was really excited that it was a new character that's being introduced in the world of the MCU. So my expectations were high, and they were way blown out of what I thought it was gonna be like. Like, for an origin story, this is like top 10 easily.
This, I can agree with you. I think my expectation levels were pretty high, and then kind of starting to read people's reactions coming out of it only elevated that. Mm-hmm. And I was really expecting something, and man, did this film deliver on every single aspect. It is phenomenal. The way the story is told, the fight choreography, the origin story, like you said.
Everything, guys.
It honestly is amazing. I mean, we might as well just start right at the beginning, because that's how good this movie is. Everything needs to be talked about.
Yeah. Off rip, the movie starts with them speaking Mandarin, and I love that detail. We are at a time now where we don't need every different race to know English. That's not how the world works. Mm-hmm. Other people from other languages speak different, languages. So I'm totally okay with sitting there and reading what they're saying. I'm totally fine with that, especially being an animator too. I'm so cool with that.
It flows so beautifully well to the film. When they switch between languages, it's like your mind doesn't take a second. It just flows, because how the movie sets up, they flow into the film of beginning the backstory of the Ten Rings and Simu Liu, Shang-Chi's father in the film, Tony Leung, the Mandarin, if you will. And they start that whole backstory with it being in Mandarin, and off the bat you see him conquering some sort of village, and they instantly show you just how powerful and deadly the Ten Rings can be.
Yeah, this man was a conqueror, and I love that they set it off with him just pretty much being just wrecking shit. He's OP, he knows how to use the Ten Rings, and I even love that the whole beginning of it was being narrated by Zhang Li, Shang-Chi's mom. I love that little detail too. That's not even coming from his dad's point of view. It's coming from her telling the story. And even how she was telling the story, I liked how she started, she's telling the truth. So I like that she's telling the story to a young Shang-Chi. And she's telling the truth. Your dad was a conqueror. He didn't do a lot of good things back in the day. But the one thing that, once he got all the power and everything he wanted, the one thing he never thought he wanted, he ran into, which was his mom. And that set his whole life on a different path. And it's just crazy to see how impactful love can be.
That whole scene, that scene leading into that romance and the connection between the two of them has this beautiful thing of kind of what we spoke about a little bit after our first viewing, was almost like he is a bad person and he has twisted ways of going about things and what he wants, but it's almost like her presence took that shred of goodness that was in him and just made it the only thing visible. Because as you go through the film, and even right beyond this, when they're doing more of the backstory telling, you see just how radically he's changed by meeting her. And that first meeting, that is where they show you what level of fight choreography to expect, because their first encounter is so I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. It's beautiful because it's more than just fighting. It's like they were dancing, the score, the music, the scenery. It's simply, it's almost hard to put into words.
And that just goes to the acting ability of the both of them, because they both, when that scene first starts, it starts off as a little hostile, but then, like you said, once they go into them fighting, it's almost like Shang-Chi's dad starts a little more, is piqued by his mom, and then they go from really fighting, and then, like you said, the fighting kind of turns into more of a choreography dance almost, and it's just so elegant, so smooth, it's so wistful. Like, I just love how, and they're just like noticing like each other's moves. I really like that. It's like one peeps the other one, they do something, and the other one's like, oh, okay, you did that, so let me do this. And I just love that it just shows that women are fucking strong. Cause she beat his ass that moment, bro.
That's
she won that fight.
I love they carried that through the film of like she was the only one that could beat him. It's like, yes, because she knows what's up and she understands herself, and I love that is essentially the overall message of this film, especially when focusing on Shang-Chi's character of, do you know yourself? Do you know who you are? Are you embracing all of you? You can't just hide away or shun away parts of yourself that you don't want to have, because they're always there, and which is amazing. And then speaking of Shang-Chi, then after that original fight ends, it flashes forward. We catch up with him in California, and they do this great job of quickly establishing his relationship with Aquafina, the job career that they're in currently, and then they swap to them having dinner or drinks with a friend. And they do this in one motion. They kind of almost set up second-handedly what the movie's going to be about. Them going out and pursuing and following what they're good at and having the courage to go for something greater. It's mint fucking storytelling. Jesus, it's so good.
Yeah, and I love the feel of just how Shang-Chi feels to me. He just feels like kind of like a normal guy, like not knowing any of his past. Like, yeah, we know who he is, but in the movie, before anyone else starts finding out who he is, I love how normal his life is. He's just with his best friend. They both work the same job. And you know, when you work the same job with your friend, it's cool. You know, you take it around a little bit, might take the car for a joyride, maybe. But I just love the chemistry between both of them, and it just felt really natural and kind of fresh. I think it's been a while, or at least not since Spider-Man, maybe, where we had like I guess I'll say younger. Kind of thing. Yeah, I'm gonna say like a little bit younger, at least compared to like, you know, Tony Stark and Rhodey, you know, and like Black Widow and Hawkeye compared to them.
Yeah,
like it felt really fresh. And then just from that, moving that into the first fight scene we get on the bus, man, guys, the trailer does not do this scene justice, because in the movie it is amazing. Off rip, they're just chilling on the bus. Then this guy approaches Shang-Chi about the pendant that he's wearing on his neck, and we get some context. I forgot if they actually say it, but we get the context that it's special to him. And later on, when we find out it's from his mom, and this guy just tries to pull it. And as soon as he does that, this man said, "Yo, you need to back up. Like, I'm not gonna just let you take my pendant like that."
Yeah, what I loved about that was like it was almost like that part of him, the Shang-Chi, the Mandarin, everything he had learned as a child was almost something he was really trying to hide away, to the point of, even when the confrontation originally began and the guy gets him up and pushes him towards his other Goonies and he gets held up, he's almost still not trying to break that mold, and he had only just begun speaking Mandarin to him. And then the guy face plants Katie into the window, and that's all it takes. Boom. And he like awakens like Rock Lee. It's crazy. And that, bro, the whole fight scene just elevates itself, and then we get a nice little hilarious comedic relief from the gentleman from Spider-Man Homecoming.
That was funny.
Which was hilarious. He did a beautiful job of blending all of them, acting-wise, the way they cut the film and the way it was directed, of blending that intense, masterfully crafted fight choreography and the comedy, like the way it's blended together in that scene is so good. And
they did it in such a very well done MCU way, and it's still feeling really modern and really just real, like real life, honestly. Because I feel like in this day and age, where anybody's gonna pull their phone out real quick to record some shit like that, especially if you're like a streamer already on YouTube or something like that. So honestly, all of that felt real to me. It didn't feel out of place. It felt more, if anything, it brought me into the movie more, because I'm like, whoa, fire ass fight going on, and there's some funny ass guy like recording the fight. Like, of course, who wouldn't be recording this fight, you know? And I love that plays into another scene later on when you find out that that fight kind of went viral and he has the name Bus Boy now.
Yeah.
I love that. I thought it was so funny.
And then this movie does a beautiful job of blending the action and all of it really having a purpose, because you flow from action scene to story, action scene, and it does this beautiful flow. You move from the bus fight scene into the journey of them going to Macau to find his sister, which again is another the way that they did this is fantastic. They jumped back to the past only when we needed to learn more. Mm-hmm. We never got oversaturated with things we didn't need to know. And the fact that when he made it a realization to the audience and to Awkwafina's character that he had a sister, on their travels there is when they flashed back to the past and they showed us his sister for the first time, and we got a bit more story of his training beginning and kind of what he went through as training, which looks like intensely vigorous training. Mm-hmm. I know my fat ass could not do that. It's insane.
No, yeah, it's crazy, especially for a kid. And we saw it once they panned back to the flashbacks and they started showing right after his mom died is when he really started getting trained by his dad. And he was still so young when he first started getting trained, to seeing him from maybe look like, what, like 7 maybe?
Yeah, I believe it's
like that.
I think it's 7 is when he
went
got
from
trained.
7 and then a 7-year time to when he's 14. And already in that time, you can already see how dramatically different he was from when he was a kid. Like, he was pretty much going toe-to-toe with the dad's main bodyguard, the death dealer. And that guy, by the way, was OP. He was awesome, so cool. I loved all the fight scenes he was in. And he even, every time he came, it's like Shang-Chi knew he had to be at the same level as him, if not better, because that's who he was from. For at least for me, it looked like that was the peak of how strong you needed to be, because he was his dad's right-hand man. And when he was younger, he had that ideology of, oh, I'm going to do whatever my dad asks of me so I can, you know, so he can be proud of me, so I can, you know, get that approval from him. So I love that the death dealer was like the what's the word for it? Like the peak of like how, like him gauging his strength. The death dealer was like the stronger one. He just had to like be at his same level.
Yeah, I agree. And it kind of shows that where they really go more in depth. Like, that's one of the scenes you spend a bit more time on when they're fighting in the past as a kid and he loses. And then again, you almost get that rematch when they meet up again in Macau. But before I touch on that fight, I just want to touch on the fact that we get to this club and Abomination and Wong are fighting, which is crazy.
That was so cool.
And it's a perfect, like, 10-second little clip of the fight, and you get to see them bump for a second. But the real interesting piece about that is when they're back in the locker room before Shang-Chi's fight, they're friends, so obviously, to a degree, so obviously it's some form of a show like wrestling, almost. But then you see Wong open a portal, and it almost looks like maybe the raft? Were you the one that pointed that out to me?
Yeah, if you see it, guys, it's like super quick. But when he's talking to him for a little bit, and right before they go through the portal, you just see like almost like a cage inside of the portal. You just see like some red lines, like the bars for it. And yeah, it definitely looked like something. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of, remember in the first Avengers?
Yeah.
Where they were like, oh, this was made for the Hulk. That's what it kind of looked like, just for Abomination. And even in that same scene, right before they showed the Abomination Wu fight, did you notice that they had a person, I think it was a girl and guy fighting, but the guy was
an extremist soldier.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. And if you guys don't remember or don't know, that's one of the soldiers from Iron Man 3 who had like the fire abilities. I was like, whoa, what a way to like bring something back. Yeah, I love that. I thought that was cool.
I heard somewhere that the woman he's fighting is also a widow. I've seen it twice, and it's kind of tough because obviously they're just quick snippets. Maybe on another viewing I'll be able to really like confirm that, but that would be another cool.
So, like, there is a lot of, especially after Black Widow. So.
Yeah, they made that pretty clear, and this takes place way down the line from that. So, but then he has to fight his sister, and that's when you find out that she's like the ringleader essentially, and
badass.
Yeah, that's when they show it off.
Talk about women being strong.
Yeah, this movie did a great job of that. Every woman who came on scene was kicking ass. It's crazy.
And I love that theme lately because I feel like with this, Jungle Cruise, even Black Widow, I just feel like they've had these run of movies coming out where they're showing that women can do it. If y'all don't believe it, they can fucking do it, guys.
Yeah, it's about time. And it's just like the way this story progresses. For me, one of the best films in the MCU that has fantastic pacing is the first Guardians. This movie has that level of pacing, if not better. I would probably say better. It flows so well. You're just watching and enjoying yourself before you know it. Especially on my second viewing, I noticed like I'd be there, I'm just like recollecting what's going to happen next. And I'm like, man, it feels like the movie's going to be over because the way the course of events flow so well. But I'm only halfway through. It flows beautifully.
Yeah, it really does. The pacing's great. I love it. And then getting back to when we're first meeting his sister, and like you said earlier, I love that going back to the flashbacks, that's when we find out he has a sister in the present day and then showing us that he has a sister in his past, and then just showing the relationship between them two, which it seemed like their dad kind of put her to the back burner. He really spent most of his time on Shang-Chi, and I love that she took that opportunity of being by herself to not really wallow in her own sorrow. She said, if you're gonna teach my brother and all these other guys all these things, then I'm gonna just watch them and make sure I do it better. And I love that they set that tone with her from the very beginning. Because seeing her when she fights Shang-Chi, I love that she won that fight. I love, like you said, that she's running that underground. She's the leader of that whole underground fighting organization. Like, she said, what did she say? She had a line in the movie where she said,
if he wasn't going to let me into his kingdom, essentially, I can't think of the correct word, then I'm going to make one of my own.
Yeah, and boy, did she do that. And I loved it. She was a badass.
It was great. And then in that fight where Shang-Chi is fighting the Death Dealer, something you pointed out to me that you said you really appreciated was the fact that he was trained to kill, and he's still very much in that mentality at this state in the movie. Because he was definitely going for the killing blow before his dad stepped in with the severely OP 10 rings and pulled him away and swooped them off back to their original home. I'm not really sure where it is, but...
Yeah, that was cool. And it was cool that if you notice the fight in the past when he's fighting the Death Dealer and then going to the fight in the present with him, again with the choreography of the fighting, it's like it's almost the same fight, but then going back to the present, it's like they have that almost same kind of like fight from the past, but then right where he like Shang-Chi kind of gets the upper hand and makes it go longer is when he like has the knife to his face, but then it doesn't slice him that time, like he gets out of it, they go for a little bit more, and then like I love that once he got the upper hand and was ready to take him out, I love that they have that moment of just real raw anger of like him really channeling like everything that his dad did through him, all the training he went through, all the shit the Death Dealer put him through, because he really channeled that anger, guys, and was about to kill this man on spot. He said, "You're about to come for my friend, my sister." Yo, he was finna end him, and I love that. And I love that they didn't shy away from that. And I feel like watching, anime and stuff like that scene just really spoke volumes to me, because I was just like, damn, he was not playing. He was really going for it.
And that was another one of those things where you sit there and you're in awe of again, you're going to hear it before this is over, but that fight choreography, it just is so amazing. Every time, overall, in big battle scenes, when they're fighting multiple people, but it really, really shines in when it's like a 1v1 fight. And that was one of those where it just hits. Before we move on to them at their home, just a quick shine on to that whole fight on the side of the building is crazy, and it's
nice,
super tense, and I felt the weight of it. Like I was concerned when people were falling off the edge and definitely dying. That it was really something. That fight is.
And they even had the time throwing a quick moment with his sister coming in to help him, and she was just kind of like, like you left me when we were younger, so that was more or less kind of like the payback real quick. But at the end of the day, she's not gonna leave her brother to deal with these guys, so I love that she came in to help him. And the way Shang-Chi was moving through those boards, my man was looking like Spidey out there. I need to see them boys get together, because I was loving how he was
going for the save. When he was going for the save, it's like he switched gears. He was like, I'm going from offensive to rescue, and he just flew, and it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, and his rescue ability in this movie was amazing because on the bus scene, he was making sure everybody was safe. He was making sure he could do whatever he can to get rid of the threat and make sure everyone else is good on that bus. And I love Shang-Chi for that.
I think, and kind of like moving forward from that, one thing that I began to even love more is, look, as MCU fans, we all know that the one thing that they tend to fail on or take a step back from is their villains. In Shang-Chi, that is not the case. Tony Leung's character is more than just a big bad in the way guy. He's complex, and he's just trying to get back his love, the person who connects his world and makes it whole. And they show that a lot in those scenes when we're back home, and he's explaining to them what's happened and how he's hearing their mom from beyond this place in Ta Lo, behind a gate that they guard there. And it just, that scene is the beginning of me realizing that he's almost like shattering the glass of, he really is more than just a bad guy. Yeah. And I like that a lot, that they took the time in a good way to show that.
Yeah, they did. And I love you saw it in his face, how just surreal it was when he was speaking to Awkwafina about, him and just how he was before he met Shang-Chi's mom, and then just moving past that and just how he was after the fact. And like you said, his whole motive for what he's doing is really just based on his love for his wife. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, who can't relate to that? You know what I mean? It's kind of almost in the same vein as like Killmonger. Like, you can kind of really, like, it's hard to say you can't understand how Killmonger feels and that you don't really blame him for not saying what he's doing was the right way, but you definitely can understand to the point of where he's coming from. And with Shang-Chi's dad, it's the exact same way, if not way better.
Yeah, I think what really makes a good villain is when how they're fighting, they truly believe it, and they even make you, the audience, kind of go, I see where he's coming from. I may not agree with how he's doing it, but I see where he's coming from. And I feel like that's something that really hit the head on this. And of course, they get locked away. Kind of just kind of leading into that scene, kind of what you were talking about, him telling the story of how names are important, and they do a great callback to Iron Man 3, where he kind of talks about the Mandarin and what happened there, and why names are so important. Then you get to the point where they all get locked away because they're essentially trying to stop him. And there's someone else in the cell with them.
So did not expect this at all. Did not expect it.
This is the one thing where it's like, as soon as I heard the noise and they got to the door, I knew what was coming. I knew it. I was like, I can't believe it. And of course, the great Ben Kingsley as Trevor Slattery was there, still alive and well, being crazy and unhinged as ever in his actor state. And he kind of almost became the new comedic relief.
Yeah.
Centrally, anyway. Everybody has comedic timing in this film, but he was like the big relief for pretty much the rest of the film going forward. And him and this very strange-looking pet.
Furball, I don't remember the name. It was kind of off-putting at first, but then as the movie goes on, you're like, okay. Yeah. Marvel with their little creatures, they always have a way of making you fall in love with it. If it's not Groot or some flarkin' cat from outer space, it's some furball with no face and wings. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's always something.
This, and then they kind of go, another thing I love is the aspect of how challenging it is to get to Ta Lo. But luckily, they have this beast from there that's able to assist them. And then they get to the forest, they go through not even the trials, but they make it through this magical maze forest that essentially consistently moves, which is great. It was so interesting.
It gave me mad. This whole movie also really gave me a lot of Avatar vibes, and that forest part really gave me that too, because I like that his dad in the beginning of the movie, when they're talking about the past, when he tried to travel through it, he didn't know how to get through it. He was kind of just going, and the forest took out all of his men. So I love that the second go around, we had that information of how to actually clear the forest, and that was cool.
Yeah, and then just all the effects from the forest moving, them going through the waterfall, all the creatures in Ta Lo, they look fantastic, and it's like a whole new.
Really good.
This is they already began the world building throughout the film to this point. This is really the point where they kind of really crack that open with explaining that Tao Lo is a different universe.
Yeah, like it's not in the same. Yeah, it's a different universe,
like a different
ours.
plane type stuff. Then they introduce what they use in their weaponry, which is the dragon scales from the Great Protector.
That was so cool.
I think that's so unique. That's them kind of introducing a new form of like weaponry into the MCU, and like. As of right now, instead of vibranium and adamantium, we have vibranium and dragon scale, which I think is so unique and so different, and I loved it. And then you get the introduction of their aunt, their aunt. You get the
3-day training montage.
Yeah, which I thought was neat. And this, again, kind of calling back to what you said in the beginning of, lately there's been a beautiful theme of women are powered and powerful, and we need to continue to empower them. And Marvel has made it very clear that they are full steam ahead on doing so. And this beautiful line that their aunt says to the sister when she's just sitting there after they've gotten the introduction and they've gotten their new clothes, and she's just watching them train, she comes over and she just looks at her and she just goes, "This isn't your father's house. You don't have to hide in the shadows anymore. Here in Tao Lo, we train everyone equally." I cried.
About to cry again.
And it's so subtle and so beautiful. The way that she reacts to that line is like, you deserve to train amongst the best because you are the best. There is no difference between you and anyone else here.
Nope.
And I love.
She's one of the greatest. She's one of the greatest.
It really shows and shines, especially throughout the time that they're in Tao Lo.
And even with that, and moving to Shang-Chi and his training. The training between him and his aunt was so beautiful because she gets to have that moment with him of like, we know you know who your dad is, but you're not just your dad, you're also your mom. And I love the whole theme of we're not gonna let our dad destroy where our mom came from, like our mom's lineage. Like I love that, and I love that was even something more to tether him and his sister to protecting Tao Lo. And just again with the choreography between him and his aunt, God, I love it gave me
another dance,
such a great airbender-esque fight. Oh, God, I loved it. I ate that up so much. Yo, shout out my man Aang, bro. I just have to say that real quick. Yeah. Shout out Aang, bro. Real Avatar.
I think that, and another beautiful subtle moment that happens in that training montage is when they're fighting and the way that he's been trained to fight to kill. Mm-hmm. She just walks up to him after about 15 to 20 seconds of fighting and changes his stance and opens his hands in the aspect of, you're not fighting to kill anymore. And that's how you beat him.
Yeah, and that's what going back to it reminded me of Avatar. That's what I loved about the fight between his mom and his dad and then his aunt and Shang-Chi, because how they're fighting. Like you said, they're fighting with their palms open. And if you ever watch the Avatar, if you notice, Aang's fighting style or the Airbender's fighting style aren't hostile or aggressive. It's more defensive and evasive.
A deflective kind of.
Yeah, so I love that. That's kind of how, her showing Shang-Chi how to fight like that is ultimately how he was able, later on in the film, to triumph against his dad the same way his mom was able to, because his dad never hone that side of himself to get all aspects of a fighting style. So that was Shang-Chi's and that was his mom's one up on him, and I love that stayed the same.
And then of course the Ten Rings show up, army to army, they're ready to go. We've got sister looking fire in her new fit, Shang-Chi rocking the jacket with the kicks fresher than Jordan, bro. And you've even got Katie, who's learned how to use bow, which is so neat and so interesting, giving her more than just the comedic best friend role. I think that's so nice for once. And then, of course, something that we loved in both forms of, it was funny, but it was cool, and a realization of, I still do hits, was when he basically sunned that old man. And especially the 1v1 between Shang-Chi and his dad is fantastic. It's so good.
And I don't know if we said this yet. I don't know if we really hyped up the 10 Rings, but we're about to. That was the one thing going into this movie. I was so curious to see how the 10 Rings were going to be used in a fight, especially since the fighting in this movie is generally different from any MCU movie we've gotten before this. the fighting with the 10 rings were peak MCU, peak martial arts. I loved it. His dad was a force to be reckoned with when he was using those rings. And even when he was fighting against Shang-Chi, even Shang-Chi, I still have to give it to him. When he was fighting his dad and his dad had all 10, he was still putting up a decent fight. His dad took the first dub, but Shang-Chi with the staff was doing work against his dad.
It was pretty cool, especially when he was shooting the rings and he was just ding, 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 ding. And it's fantastic. But of course, he does that thing you do. It was almost like reverse. When the villain says something that hypes up the hero, Shang-Chi did that, and he got sent straight into the water.
But it was such a good line, though. I love that. Like, this is what you want? Because that's what his dad wanted. He wanted him to be like that. So I love that. And I even love that happened before his triumph at the, a little bit later into the movie against by the second fight. Because the way the trailers were cut, I assume that was kind of like, and I love how the trailer cut it because it still looked cool. But when he said that same line in the trailer and then they just panned to them doing the side by side of holding the other 5, that shit gave me goosebumps. So just seeing it in the movie was still it was kind of sad just because that's another thing they do too. They do a good job of. Shang-Chi you really see the emotions on him and his dad's face during this whole ordeal. And it's so just sad, that they're fighting at their mom's hometown and they're just bumping. One's trying to save it, one's trying to save her, but is willing to destroy where she's from to protect her. And I love that he even has that moment with him. Do you really think this is what mom would want? Do you really think if she was still alive, she would want to come back and see this? So I love that they still had the time between the actions to still have these father and son, these family moments that we need, and they delivered on that, and I loved it.
Then of course we get, these creatures that the CGI was on point for, and we start to see that kind of stuff. And of course, then we see that final rising moment, and we see what Shang-Chi's mother had said to him in the past, where he has the dragon's heart, and his family will need him. And then boom, he rises out of the ocean with this beautifully designed great protector, and it's just the way that scene hits, and the look on everyone's face is almost oh my god, the great protector's back. Oh my god, you're riding the great protector. I feel like that, without saying anything, showed his level of worthiness for what was going to happen, him holding the rings in the future, a plethora of things, and it flows, it works.
And then something else I want to touch on, I love that with Shang-Chi, I love that was Shang-Chi's rise to what the man he can become. And just going back to when they were having their training montage, they tell us that in the past, where he goes on a mission for the person that killed his mom. Something else I really love with this movie that they flat out came out and told us that this man did what he had to do on that mission. Before they told us he lied to his friend that he didn't go through with it, but ultimately he did. And I love that. I just love that he has that darkness in him, because that's kind of what his dad raised him as. So I love that he had that darkness in him and he was thinking about it. And then, they had the quote that he remembered from his dad that a blood debt must be paid back in blood. And he even says that same line when he's contemplating if he had to kill his dad. And that scene was just so surreal, and it felt so anime to me in a good way that I've never gotten from any MCU movie. And that's why I love just the whole dynamic of him and his sister, and he's fighting his dad. We haven't really gotten any MCU movies where that's a thing. We had Gamora and Thanos and stuff like that, and Peter Quill and his dad. But I feel like this one was the best of all of that. Compared to all of those, this one was the best. So I love that even with the fight between him and his dad going further, when they were having that fight, I think that was something that was still weighing on him, and I believe that's why he didn't win the first time. So once the scene happens when he's rising with the dragon, I feel like that was his, remembering the words of his mom, that was his saving grace of, I don't need to do this to you, because my mom instilled in me her will, and her will is light, is goodness. So I don't have to take your route to take you out. I need to take my mom's route, which is what he did.
It's just that beautiful line of, you are me and your father. It's about taking that and becoming yourself. Just that beautiful duality of finding who you are and understanding your darkest parts, and kind of that becoming one.
Holding it, yeah.
Yes,
Because he wasn't using anything from his mom. Like, once his mom died, his dad almost closed off that part of her between both of their kids. So it was nice to see that part was... This whole movie is pretty much that part of them coming back. And I love that.
And the blend that it forms. Then you get this final beautiful fight scene with him and his dad, and you get that beautiful movement that you've seen his mom do in the flashbacks, and this, again, beautiful fight between the two of them. His dad really going all out with the rings, and Shang-Chi really doing some impressive countering, especially in the moment where what I loved was that when he takes the first 5 rings, I'm getting goosebumps again, man. He takes those first 5 rings, and they both look a little confused, and then Shang-Chi is doing these movements, and it's connecting him to his past and his mom again, that he said he didn't feel that when he did his movements anymore. And you see him doing the same movements he did as a kid, and it's controlling the ring so beautifully, and they change color to yellow just like when his mom was operating them.
So nice.
And then boom, Shang-Chi now has 5 rings, and it's 5v5, and the fight just escalates to like a mythical combat level, which is still so well done.
Best hand-to-hand combat scene in all of MCU history.
Seriously, the bar is set insanely high. Let's just kind of try to get to that, because I want to talk about what some of the world building what that could possibly mean. Then we get to the fact that the shadow being, I forget exactly what he's called.
Yeah, I forgot to.
He breaks the gate and looks phenomenal. Fantastic job to the whole special effects.
Yeah, the CGI in this movie was great.
Really on par, on another level. It's pretty fantastic. And they get to that, and you get this final beautiful moment where they talk it out, and you see it like he's changing. The Great Beast comes out, and he goes for the kill, and Tony Leung's character, the Mandarin, takes the 10 rings, boosts them out of the way, and gets snatched in the moment, and then releases them to Shang-Chi as he takes his final moments and passes away from losing his soul. It's so beautiful, and like you said earlier, the relationship and the emotion that they've shared and shown throughout the film, it pays off in this moment. And it's not just some bad guy dying. It is this man losing a complicated father figure, and it is beautiful. It's so well done.
Yeah, and I respect Marvel for even setting that fight in the way of Shang-Chi was able to defeat his father without killing him.
Yeah.
And then they also, because I feel like once he started, with the movements that his mom taught him, I feel like that was also something that Shang-Chi's dad was starting to realize. And in realizing that, was probably bringing back flashbacks with, his wife, and just the scene right before he goes and he's like passing down the 10 rings to Shang-Chi. I feel like that was the best way for him to ultimately get it.
Yeah.
Opposed to him killing him or defeating him and then just taking it away. I feel like that made it just bring back that family aspect
more
of it that I love. Yeah, way more.
And then we get this big, beautiful final fight between the Great Protector, Shang-Chi, his sister, and the Shadow Being. And this moment that Katie's character gets to shine, R.I.P. to her master, who gets his soul taken away at the final moment. She takes the one shot that matters, right in the throat, and that changes the course of the entire battle. And then Shang-Chi, as Katie would say, does this beautiful ultimate Kame blast that just erupts this being, and they have this beautiful ceremony that got me a little choked up and watered up both times I saw it, where Shang-Chi lets the lantern out for his dad and he just says farewell, and then his sister lets out the one for her mom and just says, "It'll be okay." And it's so beautiful. And then they do this beautiful thing where they just jump back to them telling this whole ass story to their friend, who basically told them they needed to grow up.
Yeah.
And then of course you have this funny moment where it's like
of the MC, the MC being like, "Did you forget what world we're living in?" It's almost to like the chick who in the beginning of the movie was talking about how life is fragile and we can all be decimated in 1 second. Like, girl, you just said that in the beginning of the movie, and your friends are telling you this, and you don't, but you think they're just pulling it out their ass. Like, come on. But it's okay, because my boy Wu pulled up to shut her down real quick.
Yeah, that was great. He pulls up, grabs him aside, and then that's how you know he's introduced. And then boom, we get this beautiful
great
sound. what is it called? Soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
Song by
the
Anderson
soundtrack
.Paak.
of this movie was great too.
Really on something else. And then we get probably one of the biggest world-building post-credit scenes that we've gotten in almost any MCU film.
Yeah, and in a while.
Yeah,
this felt
it's been a
like
while.
peak post-credit end scene. Like I don't even know what to compare it to.
Yeah, it's tough.
Like,
this is like Thanos turning around at the end of the Avengers. The world is a lot bigger type stuff.
Yeah.
We get to see Bruce Banner, not as Professor Hulk anymore, so I'm excited to see what happened there. And we get to see, surprisingly,
Captain Marvel.
Whew. And they're almost...
Brie Larson, still looking good.
So you have Wong, Captain Marvel, and Bruce Banner almost comparing notes as to where the Ten Rings are from. And then, of course, they ask how long the dad had them. He says about 1,000 years. And Bruce quickly rebuttals with something on this shows that they are much older than that. Mm-hmm. And then they zoom in, and it shows that they're showing a beacon, or they're putting a beacon out. And they ask to what, and they're not sure. And then something else that's kind of subtle is like Captain Marvel gets like a message, like a, oh, I got a slide kind of message. Mm-hmm. So she lets them know, slides, and then they do this beautiful introduction of stay safe, and almost a welcome to the craziness that is the MCU. And I loved that.
Yeah, I did too. It was definitely a welcome, Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Welcome, and we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, and kind of like the way that Wong described it of the course of events in your life are about to be radically different, so prepare yourself, made me feel like Shang-Chi is going to play a heavy role moving forward. And I kind of wanted to ask you, what do you think they're reaching out to? What do you think the beacons are? Any ideas?
I mean, maybe it might have to do with some Eternal stuff, maybe, but I feel like that's what's so beautiful about the MCU, especially with all the comics that we have to adapt to the screen, that it can kind of be anything. Like the Eternals with the whole, like, you know, with the Eternals, that's introducing the Celestials.
And the Deviants and all that stuff.
Yeah, which is like way back in the day.
Way cosmic
way, like,
out there stuff.
Yeah. So, who knows? The Ten Rings can just be maybe an extension of that, or maybe something completely different that we've never been exposed to or even heard about, which is just so beautiful with the MCU that they can just do that, and as long as they do it in a certain way, it's just more world building, and we love it.
That could be their second. That could be a pivot point to introducing almost any big cosmic being or power or entity, because these are connected to it, and I'm sure we're going to see the ramifications of said beacon sooner rather than later, I would assume.
And something else too, I thought it was interesting that they used this post-credit scene to show that Bruce Banner isn't Professor Hulk anymore, because I wonder if they're just using that to let us know he can be back to normal.
Yeah.
To go into the future She-Hulk show that's going to be on Disney+.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking about. I was like, that's kind of a smart way to do that.
Instead of showing us in the show why he's, or...
Because he still has his arm, like, busted up
Yeah.
with the brace on it. So I like that. That was, like, a good attention to detail. And that's why I was like,
I almost have a feeling that's healing. So maybe by the time we get to She-Hulk, whether that takes place pre this movie or post this movie, maybe he won't be needing the sling anymore. I don't know. I guess we'll see. And then, of course, we have the final post-credit scene where we get to see, of course, the amazing Shang-Chi's sister doing exactly what she said. If you won't let me into his kingdom, I will make my own. And one thing I love is that while they did kill off the OG Mandarin and Tony Leung's character, she is keeping the 10 rings alive. Mm-hmm. And like they tend to tell us, the 10 rings will return, which I love. It gives us a new army grunt-like presence in the same vein of something like Hydra, for instance. That's what I love about it. I think it's...
And even them saying that can kind of play on both talking about his sister running the Ten Rings organization or Shang-Chi having the Ten Rings. You know what I mean? Like, it can mean both.
Yeah, it can play at both ends.
And then with his sister, and that's the one thing too, I love that the movie stayed consistent and all the characters were consistent. Or they were consistent and they were still able to evolve. And with his sister, she definitely evolved, but was consistent with her goal of like, I'm going to create an organization, or I'm going to be running something since you think I can. So I love that she went back there, took over the 10 rings, and then as it's panning out for the final shot, I love that they're still training, but now you see that they have half girls. Yeah, like they have like half girls training and then half guys training.
They're
and then
they're
satellites.
Yeah,
they're just having like artistic, like just graffiti on the wall. Like I love, like she's really making it her own and like really trying to get away from what her dad, which he came from the time he came from, so it makes sense why it was all guys. Small thinking, small brain, whatever. So I love that she took that, elevated, and is like, yeah, I'm running shit now, big boss status.
So I have a couple questions. I have is one, what do you think we see the ramifications of first? Do you think we see some 10 rings lingering first, or do you think we see the ramifications of maybe the 10 rings beacon kind of thing? Which one do you think we get first?
Honestly, I'm not sure, just because they can kind of play that any way they want. Because that's not something, I feel like the MCU is so good at introducing something and then not necessarily getting to it like really quickly, depending on how fast they want to. Because that could be something they can have like another movie, not even bring that up. You know what I mean? And then that be another post-credit scene of like, maybe we see what that beacon was reaching out to. And then that's the third movie. So MCU can do that however they want, but they're good at doing that. So honestly, I'm not really sure what we get first.
I would only say the 10 rings because they're still a very large organization that she clearly didn't tear down, and they're Earth-based already. So I would say if we're going to get something year and a half type status, it might be something along the 10 rings era. My next question is origin stories, first film introducing heroes in the MCU. Where does this rank for you?
I think it ranks probably top 5. That's a tough one. I don't know. I think it might be the best origin we got for a character. But it's almost hard to, when I was thinking about it, it's almost hard to not rate it, but kind of give him that. Because I feel like Shang-Chi is so new to everyone. He's an old character. He's been around for a while. But just compared to like Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, like those are bigger hero names that we know about. And Shang-Chi is just so fresh and new age, like almost new generation. So I feel like because of that, he's kind of, at least for me, he's kind of like above the rest of the other ones because I was already familiar with them. So my rating is a little biased because I just love how fresh and new Shang-Chi is, and that's why I kind of want to put him as my first, to be honest. Because I feel like everyone's already had a basis of origin story with everyone else. But I feel like before this movie, you couldn't walk up to any like regular person just be like, "Hey, what's Shang-Chi's origin?"
Yeah.
Who's Shang-Chi? Who is he? Like, who is this guy? What do you know about him? So with all of that, I feel like it's the number one for me, honestly.
Okay. I think for me, it's going to be first solo outing of a film for a hero. This is easily top 5, maybe top 3. Origin story, it's definitely top 3. I have to sit on it again to see if the origin of this hero works better for me, but the only ones I would put in the same category are the first Avenger, Captain America, and the first Iron Man. Just on the vein of the introduction of a hero and then becoming said hero. I think this is phenomenal. And it's kind of tough too, because I kind of want to put like Black Panther on there, but just because we got Black Panther in Civil War, it's almost pre-introduction, it's almost kind of tough because he didn't really get in. Well, his origin was in Black Panther, but he was in a movie before that, so it's kind of hard to. That's what I'm saying. Like, that movie was really good, just being Black Panther and like getting more about, because we really got more about his life in his own movie. So to me, that's kind of still an origin story, but since we saw him before, it kind of didn't feel like that, so it's kind of tough. But yeah, I feel like Iron Man, a solid number 2 for me, and then first Avenger probably 3, and I'll put Shang-Chi first. Okay. Yeah, I agree. And then I think the final and most important question, as always on this channel, is: are you taking or leaving Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings? Guys, you know what I'm doing? You know what I'm about to say right now? I'm taking this movie the same way his sister took the 10 Rings over, baby. Take it, go watch it. Yo, if you watching this before you watch the movie, what are you doing here?
go watch the movie, then come back.
Yeah.
You know what we're talking about. Feel me? I'm taking this wholeheartedly, guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is a banger. Go check it out.
And for me, if you couldn't tell by the massive amount of excitement pouring out of my mouth through this entire spoiler review, this is a humongous take. I've already seen it twice in theaters, and I plan to at least watch it 2 or 3 more times. This movie is fantastic. It deserves your money, our money, all the money.
Easy buy.
Go
Easy.
support this film for a plethora of reasons. It's phenomenal. The story's amazing. They're pushing it's not even an agenda. They're finally doing what's right. They are empowering women. They are diversifying the MCU. This movie works on every angle. I have no cons. It's fucking great. Go watch it. And with those fabulous thoughts, we will end the chat there. So thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed being a part of this chat, make sure you hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and keep that notification bell ringing for next week's videos. And make sure you let us know what you're thinking about in the comments. And make sure you're also following the social media links for this page in the description down below. And until next time, you can follow me at JohnHenry97 on Twitter and Instagram.
You can check me out. I'm Joshy5K on Instagram and Twitter.
Make sure you support your local movie theater and or streaming service of choice, Disney Plus. And until next time,
Thanks for chatting.
Man, that movie is top 10, man.
No, easily, bro. Easily. It's so good.